Lisa Martin.
I'm John Emmett.
And this is Paranormal Science Lab Live. Thank you for coming with us today. We've had kind of a long story on the way to the studio, and we apologize for going just a little bit late, but we are excited to have as our guest John Zaffis, who has the well-earned moniker of Godfather of the Paranormal. John, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. Had a lot of things happen for both of us, I think, since we talked last. Most people know you from The Haunted Collector. Not as many people know you from your many years of excellent work beforehand. And since you're changing gears a little bit, I want to give you an opportunity to talk about things that are coming up for you.
Well, basically right now, back to, as we know, Haunted Collector wrapped up after its third season, and back to doing investigations and back out lecturing and getting involved with the mainstream paranormal for a change.
Good deal, good deal. And what do you like best about that change?
Not having to be on the road.
Yeah.
It's nice to do, the TV shows and be involved with them and everything, but a lot of times people don't realize you spend weeks and weeks out on the road, and, you go from location to location, and you film, you eat, you sleep, and you travel. And it's difficult. It's a lot of work doing that when you do it, for many weeks in a row. It really can beat down on you being out on the road continuously. So being home over the past 3 or 4 months has been great. I love it.
I bet. Fantastic. And I personally, I'm glad to know that you're out actively investigating again, because you have such an amazing career. A lot of people probably don't know a lot of the really famous situations that you've dealt with, and those that are more familiar with your Haunted Collector work may not be as familiar with all of your background and your specialties. I do want to take a moment to plug. I know it's been out for a while, but anyone who is interested in John's book, Shadows of the Dark, they ought to take a look at it. Has some wonderful information in it. And I kind of went through it again the other day, John, and there are a couple things that kind of came out for me that I wanted to talk to you about, if you don't mind.
Okay, that sounds great.
A lot of the cases that you document, it becomes clear that the reason that the person ended up having encounters with inhuman entity were not predictable. Would you agree with that?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
A lot of the cases that were featured in the book, to me, it appeared the people who ended up having trouble with inhuman entities, you could not really predict that they would have ended up in that situation.
Well, yeah, Lisa, it's most important today, and it's something I try to explain. When speaking on the topic, it's so critical and so important to get involved to investigate. And when I say that, you have to research property, you have to be very thorough with speaking to individuals, checking all kinds of things out when dealing with a haunting, to find out exactly what you're dealing with and what could be intertwined in it. Because it's unfortunate today that, people are looking at a lot of hauntings, and I hear people saying this continuously, and it drives me crazy, is that, it's evil, it's demonic. No, a lot of these cases aren't. You have to take your time, research them, and really dig in and see what you can find out, because it's something I've learned over the course of years, that when you deal with spirit, whether we're dealing with human spirit or something on a negative level, human spirit can be just as nasty. And if they were nasty and mean and rotten in life, an alcoholic, a drug user, what have you. They're going to be like that in spirit form. So therefore, I always tell people, just because you get scratched or you get pushed or there's some heavy duty type of activity going on doesn't always necessarily mean that you're dealing with something on a demonic level.
And I've noticed just in the press just over the last few weeks, two incidents that I know of people trying to exorcise demons from family members, thinking that they're possessed and things like that. Do you feel like there's a rise in this perception that everything's evil?
I don't find that it's really all that different. It's more talked about now than it was in the past. These cases have happened continuously where different belief systems, different cultures do the rites of exorcism or deliverance, and these situations have taken place for years. But due to the mainstream of, the internet, we hear more about it and more people, pass the word on the circumstances of these situations. Probably you heard the same one I just heard recently in regards to a 1 and a 2-year-old both being killed by the mother because she felt that they were possessed, and the 2 older children were in critical condition.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, again, it was something I almost was in midstream of being involved with, but it just, the weather was bad and I wasn't able to get down there because I was contacted by several of the media asking me to get involved and investigate. But again, these aren't really new situations we're hearing about. They've happened, it always happens. It's just that it's more out in the forefront, I feel, today more than ever before, with people communicating and, passing that word on so many of the sites out there on the internet. But it is sad, and, it's a type of situation. In that environment, we really don't know what was happening. I know she had moved in there with 4 children, and she was only living there for a short period of time. They said the night before they heard all kinds of screaming and yelling, and they weren't quite sure what was happening in there, and that was the outcome the following day. But again, if anybody's aware of circumstances like that, I always tell people, please call the police immediately. It's most important, especially if children are involved with it. Because again, a key factor you have to always take into consideration when dealing with paranormal investigating in cases, when you deal with a family and children or people are involved, and you feel definitely that there's something that isn't just right. There's nothing wrong with contacting the local authorities to get involved in those circumstances. I've done it many of times.
And that kind of leads into my follow-up question there is, what advice would you give to investigators as they're walking into a situation that starts to become looking volatile like that?
When you're there, always never do it by yourself. That's a key factor. Always make sure you have somebody with you, because you never know what you're walking into. I mean, these people might be scared that we're coming in, but it's just the same for us. We don't know what we're always getting involved with. We're going in to a lot of these residential homes. If you're there investigating and you're questioning an individual on circumstances, and you start asking them, are you on any prescriptions? Is there any abuse, alcohol, drug? You start asking all these questions, and these are key elements. And usually you can tell by an environment if something isn't adding up right or something's not right. It's most important to dig in, to talk to other family members to see what you could find out, or neighbors, family members, so important. And if something isn't right, it's our jobs getting involved in these circumstances to report it to the right facility. If there's child abuse or spousal abuse or animal abuse, any of these types of situations, you should never hesitate to pick up that phone and get somebody involved with it, because you might be saving a person's life or an animal's life. So, again, I always look at it that way, and if there's something that doesn't add up right to me, where I think something is wrong, I would never feel bad about picking up the phone and, calling the local authorities to see if they can investigate and see what they can find out.
Okay. What is your advice for an investigator if they are in a situation they truly do believe that an inhuman spirit's involved, as far as really protective steps to take?
What a key thing is, a person has to have a foundation. And when I say that, it doesn't matter what your belief system is or anything you're practicing. We have positive and we have negative. You call upon positive, that always outweighs anything on a negative as far as I'm concerned. And you're involved with a case or in an environment where it's a possibility, or there is something that is happening on a negative or a demonic level. Again, you have to take your time in determining that. And if it's a situation, you can't just call your local church or synagogue and expect these clergy people to just jump right in and start doing things. They need to have a lot of information. They need a lot before they can be authorized to get involved in a situation like that. So it's important for paranormal researchers to understand that you have to develop relationship with spiritual people and with other people out there. Because, again, you call up your local church and you ask the father to go out and do an exorcism in the house, he's going to tell you no. He knows nothing about the circumstances. He knows nothing about you. Does he know anything about this family? So, again, that's something today that I see more critical, and people just jumping in thinking that because they're a paranormal investigator, they can call up spiritual people within the area and they're just going to automatically jump in. No, nobody in their, environment can take that chance today. It's too crucial. It could destroy their careers. They don't know exactly what they're getting involved with, so they need to take their time and, get the facts, get information to back the claims that you might be making before some of these spiritual people are going to jump right in.
Well, and I think it's also important. I think too many people in the rush of seeing in TV's a factor, I think, of resolution in an hour or whatever, that they rush to have a result and an outcome in a case, and you can't necessarily do that.
Well, again, too, people have to remember TV shows are for entertainment. What we do in our regular paranormal investigations and our research is a lot more in depth, and there's a lot more that goes on, in that when we're doing it. I mean, it's like anything that you watch on TV, you're watching it, for half an hour or an hour. I don't care whether it's paranormal or something else. Again, there's a lot of information that is eliminated or you're not going to see in a lot of the shows. It just doesn't go that way. So it's a difficult thing for people to understand when you watch an episode of any paranormal show and, this got cut out or that got cut out or this isn't in there, that's not in there, because it's a TV show. And all this information can't be put in there. It's just going to be a very difficult thing.
Hey, John, what is your opinion on the metaphysical side of the paranormal involved in investigations?
Oh, I'm all for it. I always have been for the past 40 years. When we deal with these things, I work with shaman, medicine men, psychics, mediums. There isn't anybody I do not work with. We literally deal with a spiritual realm. So therefore, we brought the scientific community into it to be able to validate these things, because that's a key element. So bringing in anything from a spiritual, metaphysical end and trying to incorporate the science into it is what we need to strive for. We need to continue to do that because, again, our foundation with the paranormal is spiritual. So therefore, we have to look at all the different ways in going about things from many different angles. I mean, to this day, I still work with many psychics and mediums, but it's also important to have our techie people get involved so that they can document the change in temperatures or look for logical explanations. So bringing all that together, to me, is very important.
And I agree. You have to look at it as a multidisciplinary team almost.
Mm-hmm.
John, do you have another question?
We have another question in here, John. It says, how often, if any, would an object have a spirit attached to it?
How, you mean in regular cases, or are you referring to the TV show?
To regular cases.
Okay, regular cases. It's give or take. What we have to remember with most investigations, one of the key elements we always ask about the environment, what they know about the property, the house. Are they involved with anything? Have they done anything to open up doors to bring spirit in? Have they brought any new items into the house, whether, an antique or what have you? And we try to see, is this lining up when the activity has escalated within the house? So, again, it's not all just about items. Unfortunately, Haunted Collector basically gave me the title over the past 3 years of just dealing with haunted objects. But, again, your majority of cases, you'll find that it's probably the property, the people, or the house. And then, again, you have the situation where you can have haunted items tied in.
I have sort of a related question that's actually been submitted to us by a paranormal team. I don't know all the details, but what I do know is they say that they were dealing with an entity that they believe may have been inhuman, but the basis for deciding that I'm not really sure. But that it seemed to have been contained in a mirror. And now they're wondering what they need to do with it, how to approach it, to destroy it, to contain it somehow. And we're wondering if you had any suggestions.
It's difficult to answer stuff like that when you don't know all the details. But mirrors, as we know, have been used for many, many years for trapping energy in them and spirit within them. I have many mirrors down in the museum, that have been removed from haunted locations where they were triggering some of the paranormal activity that was occurring. A key factor that I always recommend to people is as you're dealing with an investigation, a lot of times you have to rule things out, so I always recommend to take the item, no matter what it is, place it in another building on the property to see what's happening. Mm-hmm. And one thing they can do is just take sea salt, sprinkle it around it and over it, because that does help to neutralize energy. Salt has been used, again, in many different aspects throughout thousands of years. And a lot of people don't even realize that all of our religious people, not just Catholics, all religious people use sea salt in all of their different things that they do. So here again, that would be what I would recommend as far as trying to determine. And I always tell people never break an item and never burn an item as you're researching and getting involved with it. If you have someone on your team that knows how to properly, dispose of that item by doing other means to it as far as burning it or something with different perspectives. I would let that individual handle it, because if you're your average person and you're getting involved with that, breaking or burning an item, you can release that energy that's attached to it, and it is going to gravitate towards the people that are closest to it. So therefore, you can create another whole situation on your hands. So you got to be very careful with that and how you're handling it and what you're actually doing, as far as item removal.
That was my thought, and certainly not to break or destroy the item in any way, particularly with so little information. But I was curious what your thoughts were. I've seen quite a bit of discussion recently about dolls and statues as vessels. What are your thoughts on that?
As far as statues
or dolls as vessels for spirits.
Again, you have to remember, with these, energy can attach to them. Now, with statues, depending on the circumstance, if it's something that was used as a idol or something that was used in some type of worshiping, you got to be extremely guarded, because therefore that energy was sent towards that item with an intent and purpose. Dolls have, again, forever always been a main source where energy attaches to them and can wreak havoc. Nothing unusual about that. Gosh, there's so many stories dating back years as far as, dolls being haunted and causing problems. Statues, again, too, depending on whether it's a religious item or something used in different types of practices, you have to be very guarded when picking these things up and bringing them into your home. They could have something attached to them. It can depend on what the intent and purpose was that, an individual had used the item for.
It makes me think of a lot of the Native American beliefs, and if you're on tribal land, that you should not disturb anything, whether it be a stick, a leaf, a rock even. It can be that pervasive. And I do think that, I agree with you, I think the cultural context is very important. What has been your experience with the role of different cultural rituals in these cases that some people may not be as familiar with, whether it be Santeria or voodoo, etc.?
Well, again, taking what most people are familiar with would be Native American. Again, people have to realize a lot of the ritual sites and their belief system. We all deal with energy, and it's a very powerful thing. Energy can never be destroyed. So therefore, a lot of areas that have been disturbed, any type of ritual area, and houses are built, or, certain mounds where remains were buried in, could be disturbed. Can that trigger, certain types of hauntings? Absolutely. Same thing with dealing with voodoo or Santeria or, any of these different types of things. When these areas or locations are disturbed and buildings are put on or items are removed from those locations and brought into other places, it can wreak havoc as far as the paranormal goes, because, again, energy attached.
John, how about a house that has that's residing where Indians did reside, and the owners found numerous items such as arrowheads? Could that cause a lot of activity if he's removed them?
Could. It definitely can. We hear about this continuously, where, people build homes in locations that, again, a lot of people don't always necessarily know they're disturbing something when houses are being built, or, big complex areas are being built and it disturbs things. That can cause a haunting. It doesn't happen all the time, but there can be those situations that certain things in certain locations can trigger a haunting. But then again, with me, I always say that too, because somebody will call me up and go, my house is built on an ancient Indian burial ground. Well, more than most likely it could be. I mean, gosh, stop and think about it. You know, they were around a lot longer than we were here, and there's a lot of areas throughout the entire United States where I'm sure over many course of years, people would be buried. You know, the Indians would be buried, and then they're disturbed because it's unmarked locations or not known locations where it might have been a site for ritual or burial.
John, we have a question. Someone has asked, what is your view on the use of Ouija boards?
It's not the Ouija board itself. The way I describe this, and the best way of looking at these things, if you're dealing with, you know, a pendulum, tarot cards, Ouija board, seances, any of these things, it's really, again, it's not the fact of the tool. It's not the Ouija board itself that's haunted. It's the people that use it. We are the catalyst. People could sit there and play the Ouija, establish a communication, and some energy can attach to that board. Because I've known people that have played with Ouija boards that never had any issues whatsoever. I deal with people that once they've played with Ouija and they've opened up those doors, you know, it ended up wreaking havoc in their lives. So, again, it's not the Ouija board itself. It's just a game. But it's the people that use it. We are the catalyst, and we are the ones that bring the spirit forth, and sometimes energy does attach to these items. Personally, I have no interest in playing one. I'm scared to death of them.
Me too.
That's my philosophy. Why borrow trouble? That kind of brings up another question that I get sometimes, and I try to counsel people, especially if they're just getting into the area of grounding themselves and putting themselves in the best frame of mind before they walk in, so that they're less likely to be affected by the energy when they walk out. Do you have any suggestions or advice?
Absolutely. Again, I still apply this today. Even myself, if I'm in a bad mood or I'm not feeling good, don't go on the investigation. If there's substance abuse in any way, shape, or form, I tell people, do not investigate. Why? You're leaving yourself wide open and vulnerable. Always have yourself in that frame of mind where, you know, you're protecting yourself. Like I said, I don't care what anybody's particular belief system is. As long as it's on a positive level, call upon the positive to be able to help protect yourself. Do that when entering a haunted location and when leaving a haunted location. These are the tools that are in place to be able to help protect us. Does it work every time? No. You know, because people will say that to me, and I always chuckle at this. I want to investigate. I want to, go to haunted locations. I want to do this, but I don't want nothing to follow me home. Well, gee, guess what? You want to go out there and you want to get involved with it, sooner or later something's going to happen no matter what you do. It's a chance we take when we get involved with doing our research or going to haunted locations. Sooner or later, you're going to have some type of paranormal experience, and there's no 100% guarantee that you're never going to.
I think that's excellent advice. That kind of leads into my next question. There are so many people who are getting into the field now and getting in because of what they've seen on TV and so forth. What would you say are the biggest risks to the novice getting involved that they need to look out for?
Again, this is something I speak quite frankly about today. What we have within the paranormal community is that we have way too many people just jumping in and not realizing what they're doing. And I don't necessarily always contribute everything to one circumstance. It's just probably you can look at the whole between movies and radio shows and TV shows. People feel once they listen or they watch something, oh, okay, I can go out and do that. Well, gee, can a lawyer or a doctor just go out and start doing these things? No. You need to take your time. You need to learn your trade, just like anything else. You need to mentor with people before you jump right into this. I call it an epidemic today. And you can't just put up a webpage and, get a bunch of people together and just start going out and doing paranormal investigations, especially when you're dealing with residential property. You have families you're putting in jeopardy. You have children. There's a lot that goes in with this. So, again, my advice to anybody out there is try to work with people that have been in the paranormal field for a while so you can learn to understand a lot of the things to look for and how to look for it.
Do you see more of a dichotomy of people getting into it because it's more of an adrenaline-seeking endeavor versus serious study?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, today people want to go to a location and they want to see the buildings levitate and spin around and everything. Yeah, so do I. I'd like to see that too, but, again, I'm using an extreme example, but, people are going out there, going to locations, expecting paranormal activity to happen instantaneously. And it just doesn't always work that way. I mean, I've gone back to locations several times, to try and get any type of evidence whatsoever, but today it's very fashionable. People just want to go out. They want to see if Casper the Ghost is going to show up, and they want to have a good time with it.
I think one thing that I know our team has a hard time getting across to people sometimes when they say they're interested is that, the amount of time and effort you're going to have to devote to it, and even a particular case that you're going to have to commit yourself to maybe going back 4 or 5 times or whatever in dealing with this situation and being a problem solver. What do you suggest for people as their approach to really trying to solve these problems instead of getting the experience?
Again, when dealing with an investigation, again, Lisa, I agree with you 100%. Sometimes it could take several weeks, several months in dealing and counseling with individuals. But you also have to realize there comes a time where you have to cut your ties with certain people. It's very fashionable today for people to call in paranormal groups, call in 4 or 5 different paranormal groups because they like the entertainment of it. And it's something that annoys a lot of us out there today because, it's a key thing I ask now before I even get involved with an investigation. Have you already had paranormal groups, and how many have you had out there? That's telling me what are we exactly looking for, and what do we want here as an end result? Do we want to bring closure to the case, or are we doing this for entertainment? So it's something you have to learn with individuals. If they keep it up and keep it up, and you're making recommendations and you're giving them suggestions and people aren't following through with that, a lot of times you need to walk away from those situations. Because we're here to help people. We're here to educate them, to try and resolve, scenarios. And today, like I said, it's fashionable. I never thought I'd ever see this, where people just love having paranormal activity in their houses and just keep inviting paranormal groups and, group after group after group into their home. And, it's a different world today over the past 4 or 5 years with the paranormal.
And I've run into a few cases where not only did it seem that, I would come in and find out that, maybe 2 or 3 others had been there, and that it was not even so much an entertainment issue for the client, but they were shopping for the answer they wanted.
Absolutely.
And my other life, I'm an attorney, and you see that when you have someone that's gone through several attorneys, and they're shopping for the answer they want, whether or not it's realistic or something good for them. Do you find that seems to be on the rise too?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That's where I say, again, I refer to so many of these scenarios as a epidemic of confusion, of people wanting to hear what they want to hear. A good scenario. We'll get called in to do an investigation, and you're finding out that there's been several other paranormal groups that have been involved. Well, this one told me that. This one told me this. This one told me I had a demon. This one told me I had a vortex. But again, they're shopping. I love that term, Lisa. I just adopted that one. They're shopping. Yeah, It's perfect. It fits it. They're shopping till they get the criteria they are seeking, no matter what it might be. So again, this is something I'm seeing very much on the rise, and it makes it very difficult. I mean, that's a hard thing for a lot of people. And, investigators go out, they investigate, they take their time away from their families or their jobs. They're spending money on gas. They're spending money on food. It costs a lot today to go out and do an investigation. So therefore, when a lot of these scenarios take place where, I find out that there's been a tremendous amount of people in and out of a home, I look at that, I'm going to look at that totally differently. And then when people start telling me, I had 4 or 5 groups in here, I've had a priest in here, I had a shaman in here, I had a Buddhist in here, nothing's working. Well, what makes you think I can fix it?
That's a good answer.
And it's the truth. You take that step back, and I listen to these stories when these people start telling me, A to Z, we've had all these people in here, and all these other, and I step back and I go, gee, someone out of the 20 people that you just had in your house wasn't able to help you in any way, shape, or form. Something's wrong.
Right.
Something's wrong. Yeah. Yeah. So, but like I said, and I will say that to people. Oh, I had the priest in here. I had the rabbi. I had the minister. All these people are in here. They did everything. And I'll go, and they'll go, well, what do you mean and? And I go, and what do you think I can do? And they get quiet. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of people out there in our field that are phenomenal researchers, and they're fantastic spiritual people. And a lot of times when a person calls me and I'll ask them who the people are, and I'll go, gee, I worked with this one, or gee, I know this one, and and they couldn't do anything, and now you're calling me? Something's wrong here. Something's wrong.
I think that also points out the importance of networking and knowing people in your area, so that, because I've walked in and clients have said, well, I've had such a, so and so here, and they told me this or that, and especially if it's a couple of people that I've known a long time and I know their work and they're very credible, that certainly runs up red flags for me.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Again, too, very much on networking. There's a lot of groups out there, a lot of individuals, a lot of spiritual people I've worked with over the course of the years. And I'll tell you what, somebody throws out one of those person's names to me, I'll go, okay, when I'm done speaking to that person, I will place a telephone call to them and say, okay, what happened? What's the scenario with this whole thing? So again, to me, that's an important reason to network, and it's an important reason to, establish working relationships with people out there. And again, doesn't necessarily.
Oh, go ahead.
It doesn't necessarily mean we're all going to be on the same page as far as in agreement. But then again, too, like I said, there's many people out there I respect, and if somebody calls us, hey, John, forget it. It's a mental illness problem. It's not paranormal. I'm going to believe that person because I've worked with them on cases or I've worked with them on situations, so therefore that holds merit to me. And people do it with me. They'll go, John, we heard you aren't working on this case anymore. And they go, uh-oh, something's wrong if you pulled away from it. And I gladly will share my findings or my feelings on a scenario.
Well, and I think that's important. I think sometimes it's easy to skip that step, but I think it's important. I called investigators up and said, I understand you were involved in this. Tell me what you saw or your findings, and people will call me up and do the same thing. And I think people need to understand it's okay to tell a client, no, I'm not going to do this investigation. I think that sometimes people get so caught up in wanting to do it that they forget that sometimes it's better not to.
Well, because unfortunately what I'm finding today is, and it's the strangest thing because I still can't comprehend it or figure it out in my mind, is when I talk to researchers or I go back and forth and they call me and they go, well, John, you were in there or you worked on this case and you couldn't resolve it and da-da-da-da-da. And I'll, like I said, tell them what I think and everything. They'll go, well, we're going to go in because we think we can fix it.
Yeah.
Again, it's like, guys, don't you think I would have done that? If I was able to do something or help the family, I would have did that. You've been in the work a year, 2 years, you're going to go in and fix it? Knock your socks off.
Yeah. Well, I think that goes back to just sometimes the over-eagerness that it blinds people sometimes to some of the bigger realities. Do we have another question?
Yeah, John, we have another question in the chat room. This Ghosty was wanting to know if the experience that she had at age 11 was due to her age or to the fact that they were living next to a graveyard. What's your thoughts on that?
More than most likely the fact that she was 11 years old. When you reach that certain age bracket and you're going through puberty, a lot of people have paranormal experiences. Once you go through puberty, all of it totally stops. So again, I find most graveyards are not haunted. Everybody thinks that they're haunted by the poor dead people buried there, and that's the farthest thing, from the truth. Usually, if we have a haunted cemetery, it's usually done through the fact of people doing rituals in there and seances and all these other different things, bringing the spirit into those locations. So
a lot of people look at. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, a lot of people look at me funny because I go jogging through graveyards. So I'm much more peaceful in most places.
Again, you know what? It's true because I've walked through cemeteries and majority of them I find to be very peaceful, and not that there's any paranormal activity occurring in them whatsoever. But, we have them out there, that are definitely haunted, just like houses and, buildings. Cemeteries are no different. But I think the majority of them, there's really no paranormal activity going on at all.
I agree with you. I think that's something I get asked so much are about various graveyards, and my experience are very few have any activity, and if they are, it's because of either rituals done there or occasionally someone actually was killed there or unmarked graves, things like that. And I think that misperception leads people to associate things that are not paranormal sometimes. You brought up a point, John, that I wanted to expand on. You were talking about the cost of investigating these days and all the equipment. What are your thoughts on the proliferation of the amount of equipment being used and how the benefit versus the cost? What's your thought?
I feel it's extremely important as we're moving forward. Gosh, just over the past 5-6 years, the amount of equipment and the different things that people are experimenting with to try and capture, any type of activity is crucial, and it's important. The thing is, we need to get repeatability, and that's one of the most difficult things to be able to do. So I'm all for it. I'm very fascinated with a lot of the equipment. Some of it, these guys will stand there and explain it to me, and I have no clue what they're talking about, but that's besides the point. With me, I still believe in going in, investigating, just have a camera with you, a tape recorder, your basics. Because if you're going to have an experience, you're going to have it. And if you're going to catch an EVP, a regular tape recorder is going to get it. So, again, the basics 101 are essentials. For getting something documented and trying to be able to push it forward from a scientific approach, it's most important to have all that equipment in there. Because I'll be honest with you, even with my group, when they're setting up to do an investigation, you got cameras all over the place. You got wires flying all over the place. All this equipment's flying around. It takes everybody 2 to 3 hours to set everything up. You're exhausted by the time you're done setting up. So, I just laugh. I just laugh at it, but not that I'm against it. I'll always be for it. It's a lot of work to setting up this equipment, and I give big kudos to people that do, because sometimes they catch phenomenal evidence with it.
That's true, but I was kind of looking at some of the more experimental type equipment, and we've played with some of it and used some of it, and to be honest, over time we tend to keep going back to more of the staple photography, videography, audio,
and human experience. I mean, just yourself.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that is a perfect element that people are eliminating, and we can't. You don't have to be psychic. You don't have to be gifted and, be running around with a turban in these houses. You can learn to sense when something is around. And I'm referring to energy. All of us have that ability, and it's got nothing to do, with certain elements of being psychic. You walk in a room, it feels light, feels fluffy, it's no big deal. You can walk into another room, and you just get a creepy feeling in it.
Right.
It's just plain creepy.
Absolutely.
Again, these are our basic elements, and, I can walk through a house, and I'm the last person in the world that's going to tell you I'm psychic, because I'm the farthest thing from it. But I can walk through a house or walk through areas and go, man, this really feels heavy in here compared to the rest of it. What is the reasoning? So sometimes you look for your logical explanations, and if they're not there, you go, okay, the energy just seems different here. Let's try to do a few experiments in here with EVP sessions or K2 meters or something of that nature. So again, it's your basics that people very much overlook when investigating today.
Well, we absolutely agree. Definitely people are using entirely too much equipment, and they're forgetting about just the basics of it. Just your Lisa and I went into a house just this weekend that we could have swore the K2 was going to go off the hook, but it didn't. And it was just a feeling that we both had that it felt like EMF, but it ended up not being. And so we went ahead and went, like you said, on with the EVPs and so forth. So,
yeah, because, as you do this a lot, particularly eliminating certain factors, EMF is certainly a factor in a lot of places. And so I know I've gotten to where I'm pretty sensitive to it. I usually walk in and tell whether, there's a higher static field. And, we walked into a place that it certainly seemed like it was EMF, but, it wasn't. And so then you have to go back to the basics and start investigating. I don't know what you think, John, but I think that some people are starting to rely too much on the gadgets and the talking boxes, so to speak. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, no. Again, when somebody calls me, John, I just did an investigation, but I didn't get any scientific proof to be able to back it up. What does that mean? Nothing. Means nothing to me. Again, because or evidence. People say to me, well, we couldn't get anything from anything. The K2 meters, we couldn't get anything, hot, cold spots or anything going on whatsoever. Therefore, I don't think it's haunted. No, terrible conclusion. You just don't always necessarily know that, and you can't base an investigation on just paranormal equipment. No way. Too many times things occur and things happen where you could have all kinds of equipment set up and everything, lined up perfectly. You're not going to get anything. You start to take the equipment down, you're packing everything up, and people have some of the craziest experiences. So again, I would never rely upon something to that degree. I mean, Lisa, I don't know how you feel about this, but you have brought me to a location, and this one location, I remember. I don't even remember the name of it or anything like that, but I know when you and I walked inside, the energy in that building was just so heavy, and it was so suppressing. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do, and for anyone listening, John had no idea anything about the building, and his instincts of what the atmosphere was were dead on. And again, it was, and I love when people do that. When I'm out doing anything, and I do get the opportunity to go do something on the side like that, I always enjoy that. And I just remember walking through, and there were just certain areas, and I would turn and look at you and just go, the energy and the heaviness within this place, and we were just chit-chatting back and forth, and I knew nothing about the place whatsoever. And really what you keyed in on really centered on events in the building that were just amazing to me. And to be honest, that experience convinced me more than anything that, the personal experience is so vital, because there was no way that you had any idea any of those things, and just nailed it. Did we have another question?
No, the other question is, John, what's your next event? Where are you going to be next?
I have several events that I will be doing, over the course of the next couple of months. Past 4 or 5 months, I've taken it quite light and quite easy as far as doing anything, because one of the key factors, I have 2 books in the works, and I'm doing everything within my power to try and get them finished after 4 years. But the events and everything start to kick back in February. I'm drawing a complete blank, but I have them all listed on the Facebook page and different areas out there on the events that I will be attending. Working on a couple of other projects. We will see what the future holds.
Okay. Understood.
Hey, John, we just got a couple of minutes here, so if you'd like to tell everybody about your Facebook page or what the address is, and then we really appreciate it.
Okay, you got it. The best way to get a hold of me or find anything about me is just put johnzaffis.com in, and that will take you to the several other pages where you can find out a lot of things about the crazy old man over the past 40 years.
Crazy old man or not, you still are one of my idols, and I'm really honored to get to talk to you today.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. And Lisa, just so you always know, out of all the episodes I've ever done, Joplin profoundly affected me.
Oh, well, thank you, John. It was definitely a moving experience, and I certainly enjoyed it, and I'm hoping that maybe we'll be seeing you again sometime, and maybe we'll have some events going.
Sounds good to me. Well, thank you guys very much for having me on.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, John. We appreciate it.
It was an honor. Thanks, John.
Okay. Enjoy. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. think we're still on the air, Eric. I think we're still on the
Yes,
air.
we are.
Want to thank everybody for showing up today. We really appreciate it. Catch us next week.
Catch us next week. Check out the website, ParanormalScienceLab.com. Check out the Facebook page, Paranormal Science Lab. Watch for upcoming events, public tours, and investigations that you can come out and talk to us and enjoy some of the locations here in Southwest Missouri. You can always message us through the website and Facebook with any questions, and we certainly enjoy and appreciate your support. Thank you all.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Haunted Collector wrapped up after its third season, and back to doing investigations and back out lecturing and getting involved with the mainstream paranormal for a change.
Good deal. And what do you like best about that change?
Not having to be on the road.
Yeah.
It's nice to do, the TV shows and be involved with them and everything, but a lot of times people don't realize you spend weeks and weeks out on the road, and you go from location to location, and you film, you eat, you sleep, and you travel. And it's difficult. It's a lot of work doing that when you do it, for many weeks in a row. It really can beat down on you being out on the road continuously. So being home over the past 3 or 4 months has been great. I love it.
I bet. Fantastic. And I personally, I'm glad to know that you're out actively investigating again, because you have such an amazing career. A lot of people probably don't know a lot of the really famous situations.
It's something I try to explain. When speaking on the topic, it's so critical and so important to get involved, to investigate. And when I say that, you have to research property, you have to be very thorough with speaking to individuals, checking all kinds of things out when dealing with a haunting, to find out exactly what you're dealing with and what could be intertwined in it. Because it's unfortunate today that, people are looking at a lot of hauntings, and I hear people saying this continuously, and it drives me crazy, is that, it's evil, it's demonic. No, a lot of these cases aren't. You have to take your time, research them, and really dig in and see what you can find out, because it's something I've learned over the course of years, that when you deal with spirit, whether we're dealing with human spirit or something on a negative level, human spirit could be just as nasty. And if they were nasty and mean and rotten in life, an alcoholic, a drug user, what have you, they're going to be like that in spirit form. So therefore, I always tell people, just because you get scratched or you get pushed or there's some head
that you've dealt with, and those that are more familiar with your haunted collector work may not be as familiar with all of your background and your specialties. I do want to take a moment to plug. I know it's been out for a while, but anyone who is interested in John's book, Shadows of the Dark, they ought to take a look at it. Has some wonderful information in it. I kind of went through it again the other day, John, and there are a couple things that kind of came out for me that I wanted to talk to you about, if you don't mind.
Okay, that sounds great.
A lot of the cases that you document, it becomes clear that the reason that the person ended up having encounters with inhuman entity were not predictable. Would you agree with that?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
A lot of the cases that were featured in the book, to me, it appeared the people who ended up having trouble with inhuman entities, you could not really predict that they would have ended up in that situation.
Well, yeah, Lisa, it's most important today, and
Lisa Martin.
I'm John Emmett.
And this is Paranormal Science Lab Live. Thank you for coming with us today. We've had kind of a long story on the way to the studio, and we apologize for getting going just a little bit late, but we are excited to have as our guest John Zaffis, who has the well-earned moniker of Godfather of the Paranormal. John, how are you doing?
Doing good. How are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. Had a lot of things happen for both of us, I think, since we talked last. Most people know you from The Haunted Collector. Not as many people know you from your many years of excellent work beforehand. And since you're changing gears a little bit, I want to give you an opportunity to talk about things that are coming up for you.
Well, basically right now, back to, as we know,